Okay, so sticking with China right now, let's talk about Taoism, and specifically Lao Tzu and Chuang-Tzu, which are the two most influential figures in Taoist history, because they wrote the two most important books, the most important scriptures to Taoism, the Lao Tzu, also known as the Tao Te Ching, and the Chuang-Tzu, named after their authors, of course. Um, so um, Taoism arises at the same time as Confucianism and very much as its foil. So there's a push and pull between Confucianism and Taoism that reaches its most extreme form in Chuang-Tzu's writing. So let's talk about Chuang-Tzu specifically, because he's going to give us the most contrast with Confucianism. So Chuang-Tzu was born into a world that was very influenced by Confucian ideals. Everything's highly regimented. Um, and what he saw in that world, well, living in that world actually made him incredibly uncomfortable, as you might imagine, and you might be feeling some yourself in studying Confucius. So for Chuang Tzu, he saw that this regimentation of society just went against the grain of his own nature. He didn't want to be put into the boxes. He didn't want to follow the rules. It wasn't who he was, and he considered this regimentation of society to be kind of a soul sickness that had that was kind of epidemic in Chinese society under Confucian rulers and Confucian philosophers. And he says that the human condition, the problem, we're always asking what's the problem? The problem is that because of all this regimentation, we have forgotten who we are. I mean, who we really are. We're being told who we are by other people, by people who are in this hierarchy. We're being assigned our roles, and we're being given tasks that we're supposed to perform. But if those tasks and those roles don't match who we actually feel like we are on the inside, we suffer. And Chuang Tzu was suffering. He says that because of all this doing, and because that we're trying to basically lop off parts of ourselves in order to fit into somebody else's mold of what we're supposed to be and who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to act, that we've forgotten our true nature. And our life has become hard because we are constantly striving. We're constantly trying to be something that we're not. And so this causes us great pain. And that is the human condition that Chuang Tzu and Lao Tzu was protesting against. And so what's his remedy? How do we fix it? Well, we do it by not doing. The Chinese word for this is wu wei, not doing. And so in one way, this is kind of easy. It means, not buying into the Confucian nonsense about all the hierarchy and all the roles and everything. But it also means not striving, not going against the grain of who we are, not swimming upstream, but going with the flow. So much of Taoist practice is about watching nature, discerning the flow of the Tao in nature, and then letting ourselves being carried away by that flow. So when you're flowing with the Tao, you're not pushing, You're not striving. You're not trying to be something that you're not. And so how do you do this? What's the means? Well, Chuang-Tzu said, you could take a nap under that tree if you want to take a nap. Chuang-Tzu often uses humor in his book. It's one of the most fun scriptures in the history of the world's religions. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend going out and getting a copy, especially Watson's translation. It's marvelous. But it isn't really just about napping, but it's also doing careful discernment about who am I really? What is it that I really desire? What am I really like? Because we should find the way that the Tao wants to flow through us and let it flow through us, not fight it. So one example of this, of Wu Wei, is, you know, I love what I do. I love being a pastor. I love being a teacher because I get to talk about the things that I love more than anything else on a daily basis. And so work for me doesn't feel like striving. It feels like fun. I feel really lucky that I was able to discern the flow of the Tao in me and was able to get into it that way. But what if I had become a lawyer? It would always be striving because I would be going against my inner nature. I'm just not that detail person, you know, and life would be really, really hard for me and I would suffer. This is a good example of Wu Wei, because it's not that I'm not doing anything, it's that I'm not going against the grain. A good example about Wu Wei is the dog. You know, the dog scratches when it itches, and it eats when it's hungry, and it sleeps when it's tired. The dog is far wiser than we are because we don't do any of those things. We have another cup of coffee when we're tired. We skip meals when we're hungry. We do crazy things that don't make any sense in the light of nature. Chuang-Tzu says if we want to be happy, then we should pay attention to the flow of the Tao, and we should let ourselves flow with it. Is this an individual or a corporate form of salvation? This is a wonderful question, and it kind of depends. Chuang-Tzu would say it's entirely individual, but Lao Tzu would say there's a corporate aspect to it, because if leaders can do this, then they will model doing this for their people, and their people will be happy too. So it's a bit of a both and. What's the human value that we get at the end of this? We get an easy life, which is not a bad deal.